The Invisible Wars – Stories of Hidden Triumphs in History. The greatest victories in human history are often the ones we never see. While military generals claim glory on blood-soaked battlefields and politicians cement their legacies in marble halls, the most brilliant strategists of our time have operated in shadows so deep that even their successes must remain forever silent. Yet occasionally, like rays of light penetrating a darkened room, we glimpse operations so ingenious, so audacious, that they fundamentally altered the course of history, and these are their stories. In the pages that follow, we'll unravel 5 of the most extraordinary intelligence operations ever conceived. A dead man who fooled Hitler, a Spanish chicken farmer who saved D-Day, a Hollywood-worthy heist 3 miles beneath the Pacific, and missions so incredible that for decades they were dismissed as mere fantasy. These aren't just tales of espionage. They're masterclasses in human ingenuity, where the stakes were nothing less than the fate of nations, and where victory often meant that no one could ever know you'd won. Welcome to the Invisible War, where the most brilliant minds in history played chess with empires and changed our world without firing a single shot. Operation Mincemeat, the deception that fooled Hitler. In the frigid dawn of April 30th, 1943, a fisherman's boat off the coast of Spain made a grim discovery: the waterlogged body of a British Royal Marines officer handcuffed to a briefcase. The Spanish authorities who recovered Captain William Martin's corpse had no way of knowing they were handling one of the greatest deceptions in military history, a masterpiece of espionage that would save thousands of lives and help turn the tide of World War II. Behind this macabre tableau stood Charles Cholmondeley and Ewan Montague, 2 British intelligence officers who had dreamed up what seemed like an impossible scheme: plant false invasion plans on a corpse, make the Germans believe they had intercepted a critical secret, and convince Hitler to move his armies to the wrong place. But first they needed a body. Through a series of hushed conversations with a London coroner, they acquired one, a homeless Welsh labourer who had died eating rat poison, his lungs filled with fluid that would perfectly mimic the appearance of drowning at sea. The creation of Captain William Martin was a work of dark artistry. Cholmondeley and Montague became novelists, fabricating an entire life from scratch. They created love letters from a fictional fiancé, sprinkled ticket stubs in his pockets, and even planted a stern letter from his father about an overdrawn bank account. They dressed him in underwear from the finest shops in London, carefully worn to suggest regular use. A silver cross was placed around his neck, blessed by a priest who knew nothing of the deception. Every detail had to be perfect. The Germans were known to examine even the wear patterns on shoes to detect forgeries. The documents in Martin's briefcase suggested the Allies planned to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily, their actual target. But simply placing obvious invasion plans would have aroused suspicion. Instead, they crafted a masterpiece of subtle suggestion: a letter from military commanders discussing the fake preparations for Sicily, meant to mask their real invasion of Greece. It was reverse psychology elevated to an art form. The plan worked better than they had dared dream. German spies found the body, photographed every document, and sent the intelligence straight to Hitler himself. The Führer was so convinced by the deception that he refused to reinforce Sicily, even as Allied forces began their actual invasion. He moved entire panzer divisions to Greece, preparing for an attack that would never come. When the Allies stormed Sicily's beaches, they faced far less resistance than expected. The man who never was had saved thousands of lives. The brilliance of Operation Mincemeat wasn't just in its audacity, it was in its understanding of human psychology. The Germans found exactly what they were looking for: confirmation of their own preconceptions. The British spy masters had crafted a lie so perfect that the truth seemed implausible by comparison. In doing so, they proved that sometimes the greatest weapon in war isn't a gun or a bomb, but a story so well told that even your enemies want to believe it. The success of Mincemeat changed intelligence operations forever. It showed that with enough imagination and attention to detail, you could plant an idea in the enemy's mind so deep they would think it was their own. As Winston Churchill later remarked, in what might have been a reference to the operation, "In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." Project AZORIAN, stealing a Soviet submarine from the ocean floor. In March 1968, the Soviet nuclear submarine K-129 vanished in the Pacific Ocean, taking with it nuclear weapons, cryptographic machines, and some of Moscow's most closely guarded secrets. The Soviets searched frantically for months but found nothing. The US Navy, however, had recorded the sound of the sub's catastrophic implosion and knew exactly where it lay, 3 miles beneath the surface in waters so deep that recovery seemed impossible. That's when the CIA dreamed up one of the most ambitious intelligence operations ever conceived. They would build the most sophisticated deep-sea vessel in history to steal a Soviet submarine right from under Moscow's nose. The scale of deception required was staggering. The CIA needed a cover story so elaborate it would convince not just the Soviets, but the American public, the media, and even most of the US government. They found their answer in Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire recluse. Through a complex web of front companies, they constructed a narrative about Hughes developing revolutionary deep-sea mining technology. The centerpiece would be the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a ship unlike anything the world had ever seen, purpose-built for one secret mission. The Explorer was a technological marvel disguised as a mining vessel. Its heart was a massive claw designed to grasp the submarine's hull, hidden inside a submersible mining platform that could be lowered between the ship's twin hulls. The entire vessel was stabilized by computer-controlled thrusters that could keep it stationary in heavy seas technology that wouldn't become common in commercial ships for decades. To maintain the cover story, the CIA even created detailed geological surveys of manganese nodule deposits and hired legitimate mining experts who had no idea they were part of an intelligence operation. In the summer of 1974, with Soviet ships watching suspiciously nearby, the Explorer positioned itself above the wreck. The capture claw descended slowly through the crushing depths, guided by cameras in an operation that one engineer compared to trying to grab a beer can with chopsticks in the dark while standing on a skateboard. When the claw finally grasped the submarine, the tension on the ship was unbearable. As they began to lift, the hull started to break apart. In a heart-stopping moment, a section of the submarine slipped away, falling back to the seafloor. But the operation had succeeded in recovering a crucial portion of the sub. The absolute genius of Project AZORIAN wasn't just its technical achievements, it was how the CIA managed to hide such an enormous operation in plain sight. They created an entirely fictional industry of deep-sea mining, complete with technical papers, industry conferences, and legitimate research. The cover story was so convincing that it actually sparked real commercial interest in mining manganese nodules, creating an entire industry that exists to this day. For years, the Soviets never realized what had happened to their submarine. By the time the story began to leak in 1975, the mission was complete. The CIA had proven that with enough ingenuity, even the most impossible-seeming intelligence operation could succeed. Project AZORIAN set new standards for what intelligence agencies could achieve, demonstrating that with sufficient imagination and resources, nothing was beyond reach. Not even a Soviet submarine lying in the darkest depths of the Pacific Ocean. The master of deception, Juan Pujol, Garcia's unparalleled espionage. A failed chicken farmer with a burning hatred of fascism walked into the British embassy in Madrid in 1941, offering to spy on Nazi Germany. The British turned him down. Undeterred, Juan Pujol Garcia decided to become a German spy instead, with the extraordinary twist that he would invent everything he reported. This seemingly reckless decision would lead to his becoming the most successful double agent of World War II, known to the Germans as Arabelle and to the British as Garbo. Without ever leaving Lisbon, Pujol convinced German intelligence he was running a network of spies across Britain. He created elaborate fictional personas: a Venezuelan student in Glasgow, a disgruntled Welsh nationalist, an Indian poet in Brighton, and even a fanatical Nazi-sympathizing KLM pilot. Each character had distinct personalities, prejudices, and quirks. When one of his imaginary agents died, he sent the Germans a moving eulogy and billed them for the fictional widow's pension. His intelligence reports were masterpieces of creative writing. Having never visited Britain, he relied on tourist guides, newspapers, and movies to craft his dispatches. When German intelligence asked about the speed of troop movements through Liverpool, he invented a complex calculation based on railway timetables and the length of British trains. The Germans were so impressed by his precise detail that they never questioned how he obtained such specific information. The British, monitoring these German communications, finally realized Pujol's value. They smuggled him to London and gave him the code name Garbo, after Greta Garbo, because of his remarkable acting abilities. Working with MI5 handler Tomas Harris, Pujol expanded his fictional network to 27 sub-agents, each with their own code name, personality, and backstory. The Germans paid handsomely for their intelligence, never suspecting that every penny went straight to British intelligence. As D-Day approached, Pujol's network became the centerpiece of Operation Fortitude, the massive deception plan to convince Hitler that the invasion would come at Calais, not Normandy. On June 5th, he sent an urgent message warning of the imminent invasion, but timed it so it would arrive just too late to be useful. The next day, he explained that his mysterious source in the American High Command had revealed this was only the first wave. The real invasion would come at Calais. Hitler was so convinced by Garbo's warning that he held his armored divisions back from Normandy for 7 crucial weeks, waiting for an invasion that would never come. Pujol's greatest achievement wasn't just fooling the Germans. It was maintaining such credibility that they never questioned his reports, even when they proved wrong. He explained away inaccuracies with such creative flourishes that his German handlers often apologized to him for doubting the information. At war's end, he had achieved something unprecedented. He was awarded both the Iron Cross by Germany and the MBE by Britain, the only person in World War II to be decorated by both sides. The true genius of Juan Pujol Garcia lay in his understanding that the best deception plays on what people already want to believe. He gave the Germans intelligence that confirmed their preconceptions while playing to their bureaucratic nature, drowning them in so much detail that they never saw the larger fiction. His legacy isn't just in the lives he saved by deceiving Hitler, but in proving that sometimes the most effective weapon in espionage isn't access to secrets, it's the ability to tell a compelling story. Operation Gold, the Berlin Tunnel, a Cold War engineering marvel. On a cold morning in 1954, beneath the divided streets of Berlin, American and British engineers were silently digging toward the most ambitious target of the Cold War. Their objective lay 27 feet below the surface: 3 critical Soviet communication cables carrying thousands of conversations between Moscow and East German military command. The Western Allies weren't just going to tap these cables, they were going to build a quarter-mile tunnel through Soviet-controlled territory to do it. The tunnel itself was a marvel of covert engineering. From a nondescript warehouse in the American sector, workers excavated in complete silence, using special soundproofed equipment and monitoring Soviet movements above with seismic sensors. The soil they removed had to be chemically analyzed and matched with local dirt to avoid detection. Even the tunnel's atmosphere was precisely controlled. Too much oxygen would rust the steel supports, too little would suffocate the workers, and any change in ground temperature might alert Soviet patrols to the thermal anomaly below their feet. Breaking into the Soviet cables required technical innovation that wouldn't exist commercially for decades. The operations chief engineer, James Angleton, and his team developed new magnetic amplifiers to boost the weak signals and revolutionary recording systems to capture up to 50 conversations simultaneously. They invented automated switching systems that could activate recorders only when human voices were detected, saving countless hours of blank tape. These innovations would later revolutionize the telecommunications industry, though their origins remained classified for years. The most remarkable aspect of Operation Gold wasn't just its audacious engineering, it was the sheer scale of intelligence gathered. For nearly a year, the tunnel intercepted 443,000 Soviet Army telephone calls, 40,000 teletype messages, and a staggering volume of private conversations between Moscow and East Berlin. Translators worked around the clock, processing what would become 368 tons of paper records. The intelligence value was so immense that analysts were still processing the information years after the tunnel's discovery. But the operation contained a brilliant twist that wouldn't be revealed for decades. George Blake, a senior MI6 officer involved in the tunnel's planning, was secretly a Soviet mole. He had informed Moscow about the tunnel before construction even began. Yet in a magnificent display of strategic patience, the Soviets allowed the operation to continue. Because shutting it down immediately would have exposed Blake. Instead, they fed carefully crafted disinformation through the cables while protecting their most sensitive communications. It was a chess game played in the dark, with each side believing they were the cleverer player. The tunnel's eventual discovery in 1956 was a carefully choreographed piece of theater. The Soviets accidentally discovered it during routine cable maintenance, leading to a propaganda victory as they invited journalists to view this example of Western aggression. Yet even this served Western interests. The public exposure of such a sophisticated operation enhanced the CIA's reputation precisely when it needed to project technological superiority during the Cold War. The Berlin Tunnel represented a new kind of intelligence operation, one where success wasn't measured in secrets stolen, but in systems created. It pushed the boundaries of engineering, electronics, and human ingenuity, while demonstrating that sometimes the most valuable intelligence asset isn't the information you gather, but the capabilities you develop in trying to gather it. In the shadow game of Cold War espionage, Operation Gold proved that the infrastructure of spying could be as valuable as the spying itself. The Farewell Dossier: How the CIA Turned Soviet Espionage Against Itself. In 1981, French intelligence handed the CIA a gift that seemed too good to be true: detailed documents from a KGB officer codenamed Farewell, revealing the entire Soviet technology theft operation. The papers exposed how Moscow had been stealing Western technology through a vast spy network called Line X. But rather than simply shut down the network, CIA Director William Casey saw an opportunity for one of the most devastating counterintelligence operations in history. The CIA's plan was diabolically elegant. Instead of preventing the Soviets from stealing technology, they would let them steal exactly what they wanted after making a few subtle modifications. Working with American companies and defense contractors, they began seeding their networks with Trojan technology, each piece designed to pass initial Soviet inspection, but fail catastrophically once deployed. The first strike came through a Canadian company that had been targeted by Line X for its oil pipeline control systems. The CIA modified the software with a logic bomb timed to reset pump speeds and valve settings when a certain date was reached. Meanwhile, they leaked information suggesting that American countermeasures were focused on preventing technology theft, encouraging the Soviets to accelerate their acquisition of what they thought was valuable stolen technology. The trap was sprung in the summer of 1982 with a deafening roar heard by satellites in space. The doctored software caused the world's largest non-nuclear explosion, as a section of the Trans-Siberian gas pipeline erupted with the force of a 3-kiloton bomb. The Soviets kept the disaster secret, but they suddenly faced a terrifying question: how much of their stolen technology was similarly compromised? The psychological impact was devastating. Soviet engineers began second-guessing all their stolen technology. Quality control tests were doubled, then tripled, causing massive delays in Soviet military and industrial projects. In one case, a Soviet fighter jet program was halted for months while engineers tediously rechecked every component. Flaws were imagined where none existed, and perfectly good technology was scrapped out of paranoia. The genius of the operation lay in its multiplicative effect. Every piece of sabotage technology the CIA planted caused the Soviets to doubt 100 legitimate components. The cost in time, resources, and morale was staggering. Soviet technological development, already struggling to keep pace with the West, was crippled by paralysis and paranoia. The KGB's prized technology theft program had been turned into a weapon against itself. The full scope of the operation remained classified for decades, but its impact was clear. The Farewell Dossier operation demonstrated a revolutionary principle in intelligence warfare. In a world dependent on stolen technology, the threat of sabotage could be more powerful than the sabotage itself. The CIA hadn't just fooled their adversary, they had poisoned the very well their enemy depended on, proving that in the world of intelligence, making your enemy fear their own shadow can be the ultimate victory. The invisible art of deception, intelligence operations that shaped history. There's an old saying in intelligence circles: the perfect operation is the one that history never records. By that measure, the stories in this book might be considered failures. They're known to us only because time and declassification have pulled back the curtain on their brilliance. But these operations, spectacular as they are, offer us mere glimpses of a shadow war that has shaped our world in ways we may never fully understand. Consider what these 5 operations share. None relied primarily on violence or brute force. Instead, they succeeded through imagination, psychological insight, and what might be called the architecture of deception. The best spy masters, it seems, are less like generals and more like novelists. They understand that the human mind is both the easiest target to manipulate and the hardest fortress to breach. Whether crafting a dead man's identity, inventing fictional spies, or planting self-destructing technology, these operations succeeded because they understood a fundamental truth. People will always believe a lie. They want to be true over a truth. They want to be false. As we move deeper into an era of cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, and information operations, the lessons of these masterstrokes become more relevant, not less. The battleground has shifted from physical tunnels under Berlin to digital pathways across the globe, but the fundamental principles remain. The greatest victories are won not through confrontation, but through careful manipulation of reality itself. In a world where truth seems increasingly fluid, these stories remind us that deception has always been humanity's most potent weapon, and perhaps its most dangerous. The next great intelligence operation is likely already underway somewhere in the world. We won't know about it for decades, if ever. But somewhere, in a quiet office, spy masters are still playing their grand games of deception, armed with nothing but imagination and audacity, ready to change the course of history without firing a shot. And perhaps that's the most thrilling thought of all.